Good morning and welcome to another edition of the Daily Fix. I am your usual host and presenter, Advocate Tudoyani. In the last two editions, I've been doing an analysis of the controversies around the two dockets, 636 and 375. Mainly because there's a problem here. There is a problem because, in the first place, how could two separate dockets be opened in the same police station? 636 was opened in 2014 at the Vosloorus police station. 375 was opened 5 years later at the same Vosloorus police station. Now the issue here is, or let me begin by looking at looking at Colonel Joyce Buthelezi. You see, that steering committee, which was supposed to play an oversight role, that she was a member of, she simply resigned from that committee. When that committee rejected her recommendations that the people in the House be charged with defeating the ends of justice and also look into the possibility that one of them could be the killer of Senzo Meyiwa. So Joyce Buthelezi resigned from that committee, and that was the end of it. She never again got associated with this investigation up to now. Now, the issue that I want to address this morning is, how was it possible, with police management in place, to have two sets of policemen pursuing two different investigations based on two different theories, operating out of one police station, investigating one murder? In other words, at a practical level, this is what was happening. You had, on the one hand, Makubu and his colleagues pursuing the theory of 375, that there'd be no intruders into that house. On the other hand, you had Gininda and his colleagues who were pursuing another theory, that there had been intruders into that house. Now, these people are all members of the South African Police Services. They are all members of one investigation team. But this team broke into two. Now, the question that I want to address this morning is, where was police management at this stage? Because the investigation at that stage, when it split into, when the investigators split into two groups, became a headless chicken. Everybody could do as they please, because the objective was simple. There was one single objective. The objective was to identify who it is that was responsible for the killing of Senzo Meyiwa. How then, in that process, do we have policemen open two dockets into the same matter, working parallel to each other? So this was a failure of management. This failure can be traced right up to the commissioner. Somebody has to take responsibility for this, because it would then mean that these two sets of police officers, using taxpayers' money, remember, pursued their own agendas, so that in theory it is possible that another set of police officers could have opened a third docket. There could have been a fourth docket or even a fifth docket. Because once you move from one docket, it is unheard of and unprecedented in the history of criminal investigations in South Africa that you can have two investigations into one incident, right? So you could have a multiplicity of you could have a multiplicity of dockets because now everybody was doing as they please. This is why I'm calling this investigation a headless chicken. Nobody was in charge here. Now, the confusion that we are now finding ourselves in results from the fact that nobody took responsibility. For instance, the Commissioner of Police, I think it was General Pierre at that time, I might be mistaken. The Commissioner of Police, once there was disagreement, and people as senior as Joyce Buthelezi, when she resigned from the committee, there should have been an inquiry into the circumstances leading up to her resignation or her withdrawal from that committee. So it would appear that this committee, after her resignation, the committee just went ahead. And that committee is the committee that we all know now ended up, that we now know as the people who pursued docket 636, that they were intruders into that house. So once others disagreed, it was then left to others to simply pursue the narrative that had been intruders into that house. And they, frankly speaking, they couldn't care a hoot about those who were saying that there had been no intruders into that house. But those who were saying there were no intruders into that house did not just leave it at that. People like Warrant Officer Makubu then pursued a separate parallel investigation, right? So we had two parallel investigations into the Senzo Meyiwa trial at taxpayers' expense. Nobody was in charge here. Nobody was in charge. Because like I'm saying, I always say to myself, if more than one docket can be opened into one meta investigation, theoretically, a third docket could have been opened, a fourth docket, a fifth docket, even a sixth docket could have been opened. Because this was just a free-for-all. Everybody was coming up with a theory. People are just coming up with theories. So if you just came up with a theory that, well, there had been intruders into that house, you are free on your own without any supervision and management to pursue that theory. And if you came up with the theory that, well, I make I make the deduction that there were no intruders into that house, you could simply pursue that theory so that a third theory could come up. This was a travesty of justice. It never happens in investigations. It never happens in investigations. This is why we are stuck with we are stuck with this mess, simply because police management never took control of that investigation. What should have happened is police management should have intervened at the time that Joyce Buthelezi resigned. Police management should have come into the picture to say, what is happening here? Why are there these differences between these investigators? So that those differences can then be identified and ironed out. And the police could then move forward as one collective, as one team. And that is what the Meyiwa family was expecting. Now, once they started, going their own different directions, this was the beginning of, the mess that we are in. So somebody must take responsibility for that. Because it would appear that an Indian company then ran around with this theory that there had been intruders into that house, proceeded with 636. But interestingly for Kininda, The docket 636 was opened in 2014. His theory lay dormant somewhere. He could not do anything about that docket 636 for 5 years. For 5 years. And at this particular point in time, Gininda knew that there were those dissenting policemen who were saying there have been no intruders into that house. And he knew that they were pursuing docket 375 that says there were no intruders into that house. So these people worked at cross purposes, operating apparently out of the same police station, because these dockets were opened at the same Fosoras police station. So it was up to everybody to do as they pleased. So Gininda ended up prevailing, possibly because he pulled strings here and there and ended up putting docket 636, in front of the court to say, well, this is the real docket. He called his docket the only docket. But he still concedes, through his own evidence in court under oath, he still concedes that there is a second docket. And to the utter amazement of everybody, this is why the Senzo Meyiwa trial is a sham, it's a charade, it's a circus. This is why we now find ourselves with people sitting in the Pretoria High Court charged with the killing of Senzo Meyiwa, when there are doubts, and that those doubts are based on an existing docket opened out of a police station. There are doubts as to whether are these the real people who killed Senzo Meyiwa. If then these are the real people who killed Senzo Meyiwa, what about that second docket, 375? Why was it ever opened? And what are its contents? What is it saying? Right? People like Yininda and Balui just want to brush aside 375. But you cannot open a docket, conduct a murder investigation for 5 years. Because from 2014 to 2019, Warrant Officer Makubu and his colleagues were pursuing the theory that there were no intruders into that house for 5 years. Imagine the amount of taxpayers' money that was expended on that investigation, only to have the investigation just, shunted away, just brushed aside, because Gininda and Balu just want us to, tell us that no, it has got no relevance. The NPA has said for its own part that we'll see what happens to the current trial unfolding in the Pretoria High Court, and in the event perhaps that they don't get a conviction, they will then, look into docket 375. And I've already said that that is nonsensical, because 375 talks about defeating the ends of justice. And if anybody defeated the ends of justice, that act of defeating the ends of justice must relate to the same investigation dealing with the killing of Senzo Meyiwa. So this is where we are. This is where we are today. The mess of two dockets. How do we have people standing trial in the Pretoria High Court when there are doubts as to whether are these the real people? Can you imagine the psychological trauma to the Meyiwa family? Me and you might not be, directly involved in this. Let us think about the relatives. Let us think about Senzo's late father. Senzo's late father died a frustrated man because he just could not make sense of what was happening to this investigation and trial. To this day, Senzo's mother is befuddled by it all. She doesn't know what is happening. Takes Fiso Meyiwa, Senzo's elder brother, he has always said the people facing trial in the Pretoria High Court are not the real killers of Senzo Meyiwa, right? Whose justice is this we are pursuing? Their family is adamant that those are not the real people. Now, my question was, how do we have people sitting in the Pretoria High Court when there is also evidence that these might not be the people? Are we just having those people? Why was it not resolved? Why was this issue of two dockets not resolved? So that come the trial, it is very clear as to which docket to pursue, or why were these dockets not fused together into one docket, right? Think about the Meyiwa family, you know, not people, for instance, perhaps who might take an academic interest out of this. Think about the relatives of Senzo Meyiwa, how they feel about this confusion and how it must be affecting them. Because the loss is not your loss, is not my loss, right? The primary loss is on the Meyiwa family. Having said that, let me thank you for all the views that I'm seeing. Let me also thank you in a very special way for all the subscriptions that I'm seeing. Please like, share these videos, and don't skip those ads. And have a wonderful day.